Michael with United Veterans Worldwide, excited today to meet with my friend Yarik. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, super.
Okay, I want to make sure. And Yarik and I were put in contact in the last week by a friend of mine, Andrew, and he facilitated this discussion. And I was eager to hear from Yarik as he's a Ukrainian in Ukraine and has experienced the effects of a civilian population being attacked by a military. And I'm curious to get his point of view on things, as well as in the end of the interview, we're going to really talk about some of his advocacy, what he's doing to help people heal. And I can't think of a better thing to do than that. And so, Yarik, will you introduce yourself to us a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. First of all, I want to excuse myself for probably some bad pronunciation of some words. I am not native to US. I'm not an English native speaker. Yeah, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to share my story. I live in central Ukraine. The whole period here since the full-scale invasion in 2022, I stayed here almost the whole, because at the beginning I was actually in Germany and I returned after 2 weeks. So I didn't face the first days of the actual invasion. But then later when I returned, there were these horrible ups and downs, and even there were even huge attacks on our city where I stay. Even in central Ukraine, there were these missile attacks in the center of in the downtown. But for now, it's more or less calm in my area. But you see the news and you understand where the hottest area is, where the front line is. Yeah, so that's where I am. My place is called Vinica. So that's it.
Yeah,
as an introduction, it's okay. Yes, I think.
Yep. And your English is very good.
Yeah, thanks for this.
Yeah. So let's go back in time a little bit and let's talk about growing up in Ukraine. Tell me about your education that you received.
So I had an ordinary secondary education in the normal school, and then later I went to study in Kyiv. My specialization was the humanitarian sciences. And then I had the opportunity to stay in the capital, so Kyiv is the capital, but I decided to move back to my native town or native city. Yes, it's rather big also. It's 500,000 city of Vinica. Where I think I'm a more the rural type guy. So Vinica is not a rural place, but anyway, I had an opportunity to be in the Kyiv, which is a megapolis, but then I downgraded, and now I feel that I want to downgrade even more because I love countryside, and I run some projects in my profession in countryside area also. So I'm 38 now, and actually I'm lucky to have started my career myself in NGO sector after I graduated almost immediately. So I didn't swap the jobs. So I tried several other directions, but then I understood that youth work that I do now, this is my calling, so to say. And partly my education helped me because I was studying in one of the most prestigious, maybe not correct word, but most university with the very active people. So some of those I studied with, now I see in the government, for example. It's the university with the history. So it's the oldest university in my country. It's called Kyiv Mohila Academy. Yeah.
And why go into humanitarian science? What drove you to that career choice?
I was always good with history, but actually I was not very correct to say. I was studying on the pedagogue, but it was the biology. Yes, actually the biology, that it was my basic bachelor degree. But I had to be like a pedagogue of biology. That university is very good for humanitarian sciences. A lot of people graduate that area and that university, and they become either academics or very good pedagogues, and they continue to be this university tutors. Yeah, so I think my primary goal was to get into that specific university, and I had some humanitarian sciences and psychology. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. When I was seeking advanced education in a master's program, I sought for a master's in humanitarian administration, and it was because I felt called to help people who couldn't help themselves. And much of the work that I did, and even Andrew did while he was in the Army, I spent a lot of time in Africa working with refugees, helping people with programs and projects to find a better way of living. And it was the most beneficial work that I've ever done personally. But it was also some of the hardest, because I saw some of the hardest tragedies in people's lives. And I can only imagine, with the war in Ukraine lasting now going on 3 years, and so many people have fled Ukraine for safety and gone into neighboring countries, right, Poland or wherever else, to try to find a life again. And my heart goes out to people, civilians who struggle in the middle of war.
Yes, there are a lot. I feel this in my circle. So one of the effects of the war is that now I unfortunately, I say I knew a lot of people, and I know still them, but they have different life directions now. Some of them left, some of them in the army, some of them I even don't know where, so they just disappeared from my life. So this is what I see, and this is actually, this is how I changed. I started to be, I teach myself to be less connected, not connected, maybe not proper word, but to feel not so disappointed when I lose someone, because I understand that the war is so powerful thing that people make choices and they don't count our friendship or even family ties. I have some family abroad, yes, because of the war. So this is how the life is happening, how the war affects, this network that you have. Don't count on it. So it's just a very unstable thing in such situations, the network of people, friendships, and so on.
Yeah, the psychology of survival is a challenging concept. People put their interest and their immediate connections as the priority for safety. And I can't imagine, and it's hard for us to imagine in the United States, I think the closest thing we can think of is 9/11, when the World Trade Center was attacked by commercial airlines, right? And who would have assumed that would happen, and who would ever plan for a scenario where civilians working in a building would be the main target? And yet, in the war between Russia and Ukraine, military have sought to attack and target civilians. And I never understand this as a warrior myself, having been in combat. I never understand why we would want to attack a civilian population. And it's really backfired on Russia's strategy. Because now, instead of a small group of military fighting a larger group of military, we've had so many Ukrainians and people coming across the border and saying, we want to help fight. And it's become a brutal war. And do you have any stories that you can share with us that you know about, of people, civilians, or people within your circle? Maybe you said that it broken up and gone different directions. Any specific stories you can share with us to give us more insight?
Yeah, of course. So, for example, one of my best friends, he died in the service. He was killed on the line of duty. So he was one of my wedding maids even, yes. So he volunteered. Actually, we split almost after the university because I moved from Kyiv. But anyway, we communicated very close with him, and I followed his life. He followed mine. Sometimes we met when we traveled to Kyiv, and he came to Vinnytsia. Yes. So, and it was very pathetic moment for me. And that guy, he was a true believer in the values of defending the country, because now with a huge scale of war, of course, there are different types of people who are in the army. Some of them, they refer to it simply as a job, Some of them, they are there because they were obliged to, because of the law. Yes, they were conscripted and they don't have that high motivation. But that guy, he was really motivated by values of defending the high values, And that's really sad to see his now daughter, who 10 years old, who remained continuation of him. And so I remember that very strange situation because his name is Ostap. I communicated with him a lot, as I said to you, in students' years, and I remember him like a young, very bright guy. Then, of course, I met him several times after that, yes, and we spoke a lot. But anyway, I couldn't trace how he changed. And then when the war started, then he volunteered and we communicated with him, but still I did not share with him physically. And then he was killed and I had to go to the funeral. When we came to the funeral, I saw his picture on the grave, and they took a picture of the young smiley guy, And I see like a guy who was my former friend from the students' years. And then you wouldn't imagine. So during this moment when I saw him, he was looking at me. The air alert began. We hear the sound of this like a huge
the siren
bell or whatever. The siren around me, and that was right. When I came to the funeral, and the first thing I saw his face and the siren. So it was a very mystic moment for me. Even now I have these goosebumps, and when I tell you this story, and I start to connect, my impressions of him when he was a student, when we hung out with him, and then I see him on the grave picture with this siren. So it was like a travel into the dystopia for me, So this is one of the closest examples that I can say. But then another example, another story, as I said to you at the beginning, we had a very fierce attack right in the downtown of our city. Here is the concert hall. Yes, and allegedly something was happening there. Some meeting. It was very strange because we don't know a lot of information who was collecting there, but I think there was people say that there are rumors that some high-profile militaries were in that building when it was attacked. But it was an ordinary day, and the rockets were so fast, they were hypersonic, that there was no even air alert, And then it was hit, and then the shrapnel and then the blast from the material of the building killed around 50 people who were just walking around. And there was the one even lady with a stroller, and she was killed, but her baby was not killed, So it's horrible. And we always pass by that building. It's in the center of the city, and we see it's not renovated. And it stands like a skeleton, this house. And I know there had to be a concert. Usually we have concerts now about charity, to collect money for the militaries and so on. But that day had to be a concert, and across that concert hall, that huge one, there was a smaller concert, like a pub. And I know a guy who was I don't know him personally, but I know his story. Yes, so I know people from the pub who told me he was the a manager for that specific concert, and he was outside, I don't know, just walking, and he was killed there. Yes, so he was preparing for the concert the same evening, and then he was killed there. So some of the two stories that are close to me, and I remembered.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for the loss of your friend. I too have lost friends. But the difference would be that the friends that I've lost signed up to go fight. And your second loss was a person who didn't sign up to fight, was just trying to live. And for your friend that died in defense of his country, in so many ways, it's not enough to call him a hero, but he died doing what he believed. And there's nothing more powerful than laying your life down for the people of your country in that belief. And yeah, my heart goes out to his family for that.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
So one of the things that I'm always interested in is since my deployments to Africa, in some of the countries where there have been genocides and millions have been killed by secret police and gangs, specifically in Rwanda and Burundi, and the civilian population were the targets. It wasn't military, and the trauma that those civilians endured and still endure mentally today is a word called palpable. We could almost feel it in the air. And I remember my first day in Burundi, which is just south of Rwanda, and both of those countries share the same two tribes or three tribes, Hutu and Tutsi. And I remember asking my driver, "Which tribe are you from? Are you a Hutu or Tutsi?" And he stopped the car, he pulled over, and he turned around and he said, "Sir, we don't ask that question anymore. We don't try to distinguish, because there are still so many hurt emotions and feelings that it will make the population rise up again and fight." And in the last year, I came in contact with several different Ukrainians, some who were coming to Canada and the US to raise up hope and support for the Ukrainian military. And I even scheduled with a high official in the government to come on my channel and share his story. But he saw that I had previously interviewed a Russian soldier. And when he saw that, he said, "I will not come on your channel. I will not." From me as a warrior who's fought in different countries, I do not hate the Iraqi people. I do not hate the Afghan people. No, in fact, I love them. I hate the leaders of those organizations that I fought against. I hate them. But when it comes to veterans of Ukraine and veterans of Russia who were following orders, who were conscripted, my heart goes out to both of them, because I know of the trauma that they experienced. And I hope that one day Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers can come together and be the brothers and cousins that you are linked to. And maybe it's not going to happen for a long time.
Yes, not for a long time, believe me. Yeah, because first of all, we understand that there is a huge unfairness also in the treatment of Ukrainians from the perspective that a lot of people, yes, they don't know the story, like the history, and they think about and they start to operate about these notions or maybe ideas that Russia in some way had a mandate to do it because of the historical processes, yes, which is not correct, yes. Now a lot of quasi-history that is pushed by the leaders, especially by Putin, what was fair to do, what was not fair to do. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they are poisoned by this information. And then they start to speculate, oh, yes, maybe it's correct, maybe it's not correct. But I tell you this, that Ukraine was under occupation even before the Russian Empire and so on, and then it moved to Russian Empire, to Soviet Union. So we always constantly fight off some invaders. Yeah, and this is one of the phases, so nothing changes. Ukrainians always need to defend themselves. Unfortunately, it's from the Mongol Tatars still, like 800 years back, and now the same continues. So should be empathy for the normal Russian soldier who doesn't understand this. Of course, yes, he's also part of he's a victim actually. Yes, maybe poisoned with the same propaganda. Yeah, but from the historic point of view, Ukraine is in the position that is always have this grief land. We have a lot of lucky bloodlands. So always we fight off, and only this fact makes a huge respect to those soldiers who go and understand this. Yes, and then they fight for. Anyway, we preserve our culture through fighting, basically. Like other cultures, like Russian culture, they always expand, and this is different type of military action. This is the expansionist military action. For us, it's I'm not a professional historian, but I would say that we never meant to expand. So this is two different roles of soldiers from one army and from another army.
Yeah. You bring up a good point about history. And maybe if I can go back a little bit and talk about the history, we go back to the time of Lenin. And Lenin put in policies to hurt the Ukrainians and cut off their resources to the point where millions starved. And it's hard for Western United States mentality to put ourselves in that scenario where a foreign country would cut off all of our resources and entire, cities would die. It's not fathomable. So whenever, and I'm talking to the global audience today who's listening, whenever we look at conflict and we only look at the immediate scenario we're looking at without the historical background, we're going to fail to understand the full concept of why it's so important that Ukraine fight. And I'll tell you a second story, Yarik. In maybe it was it was either in the late 1980s, early 1990s. I remember being in class and a new student had arrived. And I thought she was a beautiful girl. And the teacher said, "Michael, will you please help?" And I don't remember her name. "Will you please help this girl, show her where things are, take her out to the recess so they can play on the playground, help her with her school." And her English wasn't very good, but she was a refugee from Ukraine. She and her family had fled before communism started to collapse. And she was in a new country without any benefits. And I befriended this girl, and she was such a loyal friend for so long. That was my first introduction to a Ukrainian. And my heart went out to her for being a refugee fleeing persecution from USSR at the time, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
1980s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, basically, people flee Ukraine because of the invasion. They don't flee the country. If we think about the Soviet Union as a state, yes, So there was the internal repression that people fled, yes, were fleeing. Now, luckily, Ukraine is on the democratic side of the world, and we don't need to be afraid of our government. Of course, it has its own limitations. Yes, but it's a different type of refugees, yes, from Ukraine. We really have here the problem of external aggression, and that's why people are fleeing this land. Otherwise, they would not be fleeing. But in Russia, also the same processes are happening of people emigrating out because they have not very welcome conditions of living because of repressive government. That's what actually was in the Soviet Union. So it's like a continuation.
Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully in some years the war will finish, but the process of Russians fleeing their land, I think it will not stop before this, the hereditary, or the consecutive regimes of repression will fail. If Russia doesn't change in sometimes 10, 20 years, so other Mikes like you will be meeting girls from Russia, introducing them as refugees because they will be fleeing. Russia now is falling into the demographic pit, and they are throwing their people like a meat,
Yep.
into the grinder, and that's horrible. Yeah, for us also is bad, but it's different type of fleeing. Like normal people would not be fleeing this land. Yeah. Happening now in this speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I've heard you the whole time.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, your screen just kind of froze for a second, but yeah, I'm sad to see the regression of Russian policy going back to a state of controlling the media and locking down anybody who is a dissident, doesn't agree with them. Yeah. It's the worst kind of leadership. And that's why I say my heart goes out to the Russian people and some of the Russian soldiers who are conscripted, because they're not getting truthful information. There's no open source media that can communicate to them and say, there would be no conflict if Russia didn't invade. There would be no Russian deaths if Russia did not invade. And there's a lot of misinformation in the media today globally, and I say that globally because in Canada, in Europe, in the East, about Trump, President Trump. And a lot of people don't like him because of tariffs and other things. But when President Trump gets involved, there become solutions. And when we look at Russia and Ukraine, his involvement will help end that conflict, at least the ground warfare. The other grievances are going to take another generation to heal. But I hope that end of conflict on the ground war comes to an end very quickly, so we no longer have at risk civilian populations in Ukraine suffering from the effects of this.
Yeah, I agree that the war should finish by diplomatic means, because every day a lot of people die. Yes, it's horrible what's happening here. Still, we need to remember about justice also. It's not a simple word, not a hollow word. Yeah, so if something like unclosed or other things remain, like unjust peace, I mean, yes. So it's also bad because it's a ground for a new stage of war later. Yes, so I hope that the new leadership of US will be able to achieve this just peace when Ukrainians will not have to think about, okay, so we were betrayed, let's fight again. This can happen. Or Russia, for example, okay, so this is unfair what happened, we will fight in 3 years again. It's very difficult to achieve. Yes, I agree. But I feel the energy now is really like powerful people are the head of US. So I hope that this should work. Yeah. Still not that much time has passed, and let's see the fruit.
Yeah. My hope is there, and my prayers are there as well. I would love to see the end of this conflict, and then start to help the population and veterans on both sides start to heal. And it's going to take a lot of work. And one thing that we've learned from conflict in the United States is that hatred of a country or of a people only hurts the self. Hatred cannot be maintained. There has to be some other way of working around it. It's super sad that has to be the case, but hatred will only destroy us individually if we maintain that hate.
Okay.
As we get to the end of the interview, Yarik, I sure appreciate having a new friend in Ukraine, especially someone who is as intelligent as you are and is motivated in the humanities to help people. Will you tell me about what your advocacy is today and what your plans are and what you're trying to do and why?
So as I told before, I started to be active after the university, and I found the direction of youth work, which is, first of all, opens up myself, and then I found instruments to open and develop and to evolve like a communities of youngsters, yes, through involving different like funding, for example, European funding there are for different non-formal education activities. So we work with the topic of youth leadership a lot, with democracy, with participation, media activism. In 2022, we adapted our work towards the goals of helping the victims of war. So we founded a foundation. So we launched a foundation. It's a foundation now. It's focused mostly on helping the militaries, but also in the action. So we're collecting some material, low scale, but anyway. And as well, psychological help also. So we were organizing, for example, the seminars on PTSD, sessions like to fight PTSD, that work with civilians, especially. Yes, we brought in psychologists, psychotherapists, and it's one of the directions that we are working. But me personally, now I specialized in working with youngsters who are left without opportunities that they had before the war. For example, a lot of youngsters, they lost their education because the universities, they started to work remotely. They cannot return to their cities. For example, Kharkiv, Odessa, there are some universities which stopped. And then those students, they came back to the villages, for example. In my area, a lot of villages, and there are youngsters who are stuck there. They cannot return to university, but at the same time, they cannot do anything in their local area because of the very low employment and low economic opportunities. Generally, now is a crisis in Ukraine. Yes, so we work towards these people. Now we have experiential, we call it experiential education center. We run it in one of the villages in our area. It's a very beautiful village, but with very few opportunities for youngsters, almost nothing to do besides of the school. And actually the school is going to be disbanded or stopped also because there is a lack of financing for the school. And there are around 50 young people, and we try to engage them in cultural activities. Cultural activities, non-formal education. One of the recent ideas that we did, it's called the Youth Folklore Club. We invite youngsters to explore local heritage and show it through media, media content on social media, where they normally they use something, whatever, Instagram, TikTok. So they throw it there, and that's how they are getting more active. At the same moment, they preserve and they think more about their identity, about the culture where they stay. So this Youth Folklore Club and other ideas. Very nice that we have this patch of land where something can grow. So one of the things that we now plan to do is the thing called community garden. We want to make greenhouses and engage people to work cooperatively on growing some produce. Again, it's not the idea to get the food. Food, I think, what is good for Ukraine, that Ukraine is, it has the nickname, the harvester of Europe, yeah, the harvest basket of Europe, sorry.
Yeah.
So people live off their land mostly, yeah, so they have food. But normally this is potato, beetroots, something like traditional, but we want to offer for them opportunity to engage some knowledge how to grow something specific, for example, not ordinary for our area. We want to make these greenhouses, and then people come, and we invite people from other areas who know something about permaculture, for example, how to cultivate the soil, that something grows in new way, yes, without other methods that are used locally, yes, without pesticides, for example, herbicides. Yes, so it's an experimenting ground, also method to involve those who stay behind and they have nothing to do, like youngsters, and also a method to exchange with people with knowledge. So this community garden is one of the examples of what is Eco Center for us, experiential education place, but also opportunity to make a community process around something. Yeah. So so folklore, then this horticulture project, and then media production. That's our direction for now. So I'm coordinating a lot of stuff from the position of the youth worker. So I create this environment for youngsters to feel safe to work and to implement their ideas. And then we search for resources from different directions. So one of the things that we now run is the fundraiser in even like a crowdfunding in GoFundMe, which is also popular in US. We have there this campaign that we call for donations for this community garden, because we need materials to install these greenhouses, to buy seeds, for example. Yeah. So so I can invite you to this page. And also we try to continue to work with our partners from European Union who offer these chances of projects for non-formal education. So Erasmus Plus program, one of the good examples that they offer these small costs, but anyway, people can participate in seminars abroad. Unfortunately, these are girls only, because now there are limitations for boys, even young boys, to travel out of Ukraine. And but still, that's good that at least we can send girls to some seminars, trainings on different topics, on environmental education, and then various European awareness topics. And they come back and they still one of the ways for them not to be stuck. Yes, so this is our NGO. That's how we work.
Yeah, I salute you for your efforts. In the middle of conflict and even post-conflict is a terribly impossible environment for one to get funding, to keep programs running. And unfortunately, it's the youth and the women who suffer the most. Yes. And, you haven't mentioned anything about human trafficking, and I don't know specifics, but I do know that every conflict that I've been involved in and seen, there are always predators who are trying to take advantage of the weakness of others. And I'm sure that's happening in Ukraine as much as anywhere.
Yes, yeah. Especially at the beginning, when there were hundreds of thousands of women who left the country. Yes, and I was myself abroad, how I said to you at the beginning, yes, I was in Germany. So I saw how it was happening, I was coming to Hauptbahnhofs, yes, like the main, like these railway stations, and there were the influx of refugees from Ukraine, mostly like women with children, or sometimes single women and so on. So it was very simple to, if someone wanted to abuse this situation, it was very simple because people were coming with their problems, with their need that someone helps them. So the predators could play this role and fake this very simple because they just come to the station. Oh, I can help you. Yes. So there was no one who organized this process, who checked who came to the station to help. Yeah. So everything was on the trust in the situation of very huge stress. So you imagine these people come, they have this stress, what is happening behind in their country. They are disoriented in the new environment, new language. And then, yes, so it's easy target for abuse, yes. And unfortunately, it was happening. And now I guess it's more organized because there were the structured effort in European Union to control this because of the stories of trafficking, yes. And then the NGOs like La Strada and so on, they started to work on this topic also. They started to distribute this knowledge, information, like booklets on the railway, these hubs, and some information campaigns for people to avoid traffickers. But still, I think that this is huge part of the problem. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the worst part. It's the saddest part, and I really wish that leaders in the European Union and country leaders would recognize first and foremost when crisis happens, the civilian population has got to be protected at all costs. And if they're being transferred to another country, there have got to be people there ready to do something so that predators don't get to play a role. I appreciate your projects. I love the fact of healing through the arts, healing through horticulture, right? All of these things have been beneficial to me in my healing journey from combat trauma. And so I know that it will work for other people too. So share with me your links. If you have links to the Instagram for the arts and for the horticulture, send it to me. Let me post it on this channel here. I would love to publish that and put it out there for the global channel to see, and also to help out for whatever time remains for the GoFundMe as well. Love to have any of that happen. And my friend Yarik, I wish you all of the best as you continue your journey to help the civilian population. My goal would be one day to be able to come to Ukraine and hold a seminar and talk through opportunities and entrepreneurship and healing and health. And maybe that can be arranged in the future. I would love to do it.
Yes, yeah. I welcome you. Yes, and I'm also happy that we have such friends who don't forget about us, who think of us as really friends. And yes, let's be optimistic. Now difficult times, but as we say, the bright morning comes after a very dark dawn. Yes, dawn. Yeah.
Yes.
Just the end of the night. Yes. So I hope that we are arriving to the morning. Yes, and really, I hope that there will be peace for Ukraine, no more suffering soon, but also just peace. This is very important because this will be unfinished story of repeating conflicts, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so personally, I'm grateful that you had the opportunity to host me and to spread my word, my information, and care about what I say.
Yeah. Well, Yarik, let's keep in touch and see how things evolve over the next year or two, and see if I can't come out there and join you at some point.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, my friend.